Hey there, Astral Travelers, and welcome back to the Astral Tourist Podcast. In today's episode, we'll be riding some astral currents and exploring the Galapagos Islands. Yes, there will be penguins and even a prehistoric power-up. Early this morning, I astral projected using the wake back to bed method. This is where you wake up and then go back to sleep with the intention of astral projecting. I made a general intention to speak with an angel or just explore somewhere beautiful as I was falling back asleep. It's been a while since I've seen an angelic being in the astral, and they're really quite the sight to see if they show you their light form. Instead, things were about to take a very different turn. The first thing I remember is the blackout phase, that moment when you're floating between sleep and astral projection. When I finally became lucid, I was flying, wait for it, on a massive jet plane. I was doing a reality check, just casually inspecting my feet, when I realized, hey, wait a second, my shoes are ridiculously long. Odd, right? They also had some odd padding in the toes. They looked like they'd been stuffed with tissue papers. So weird. But of course, that didn't really matter. I quickly remembered I was astral projecting and did not need shoes anyway. I usually prefer to float around in my misty form, so I slipped off those bulky shoes and checked out my surroundings. I noticed I wasn't alone. A friend of mine was sitting next to me on the plane. When we landed at the airport, I couldn't find him anymore. He must have woken up, or maybe he went off on his own adventure. So I went off to see what I could find. Quickly, I left the airport and exited into a busy sunlit city street. I couldn't tell which city it was. That's when I began thinking about another friend who also astral projects. We had a nice warm connection through some emails, so I thought, why not try to find him and say hello in the astral? Hoping for a makeshift portal to appear, I simply stated, I wish to find my friend in the astral, and I filled in his name. Instead of a portal, a strong energy current whisked me up into the air. I've had this happen before, and consider them to be the equivalent of a moving portal. Instead of flying through, it's best to ride them. I decided to go along with it as it picked up the pace. I was a little bit surprised as I didn't really expect this to work very well on my first request. Soon this current connected up with a main astral elemental current, and I was zooming at light speed over an ocean. The energy felt incredible. Then I went on in a blur through various cities and buildings. Some had futuristic-looking bars and vibes with blinking lights. I couldn't make out much due to the great velocity I was traveling at. Finally, I landed on an island. There was the sensation of oppressing humidity in the air, even though I knew my astral body wasn't feeling the full extent of it. A man with a nice grin and messy hair sat at a small wooden welcome table for visitors. He immediately recognized me and just waved me on through the astral entry and on into the area. The place felt familiar. I must have been there before in the astral and forgotten all about it. This is where having friends in the astral comes in, so they can remind you, like, yeah, I'm your friend, you've been here. It helps. On my way, flying by him, he even invited me to have a drink with him and one of his friends. I told him I had to stay focused on finding the friend I was searching for. He said we could have drinks on another visit. Then he told me the name of a special drink I've never heard the name of, and that he'll save it. I've since forgotten the name, but he did tell me, and I wonder how often I visit this place, only to forget it since he knows me so well. Various people had small, beat-up, weathered, shoddy-looking stalls set up. No fancy astral malls here, just stalls and booths. I wondered if I had ended up in the Caribbean. Telepathically, I could hear one of them despairing about being there instead of wherever else he had planned. I kept my focus looking around in case my friend might be there. There was a large tourist crowd in the area. Many had lawn chairs set up by the beautiful blue-green sea on the beach. There were enormous waves, which were way more volatile than the Caribbean. So that ruled the Caribbean out. Where might I be, I thought to myself. It definitely wasn't Hawaii. So not the Caribbean and not Hawaii. Then I saw what the crowds were waiting for. Loads of the cutest small penguins came into view in the ocean way off to the left. My left, I should say. I noticed they were much smaller than the Antarctic penguins. They were frolicking in the waves, playing and jumping as they swam by, like they were putting on a show for everyone. The crowd was buzzing with excitement over all the adorable penguins. They had been a big hit, but I still couldn't figure out where I was. I asked a few people, but none of them seemed to know. One guy told me where he was from in the USA. I think he said Wisconsin, but he didn't tell me the name of the island. Then an elderly couple stopped and chatted with me for a moment on their way out. The man smiled warmly and told me, "Sure, it's Walter Church's Island." As the crowds started to thin out, I continued to take in the scenery. There were some enormous-looking birds that resembled prehistoric ducks, and at least 4 gigantic green sea serpents out in the ocean, stretching their heads up high into the sky. The longer I stayed in the area, the more everything seemed to be swiftly reverting to a more prehistoric state. The whole area was changing around me into a far more primal form. The prehistoric primal vibes were filling my astral body with energy, making me buzz and giving me a kind of prehistoric primal power-up. I ascended up into the air and shifted into a more ethereal form in order to stay out of sight in case any more prehistoric animals showed up. A tropical storm was brewing up there as well, so I got to soak in those storm energies as much as I could before waking myself up. When I woke up, I couldn't help but do a little research. And guess what? The island I visited, with its smaller penguins and tropical stormy vibe, is actually one of the Galapagos Islands. The penguins were the Galapagos penguins, the only species of penguin that lives north of the equator. Those sea serpents looked exactly like green moray eels, only way bigger. And those so-called prehistoric ducks, they turned out to be booby birds. That's right. That's a real name for the birds, which, fun fact, are seabirds, not ducks. The only thing that doesn't make any sense is the name. None of the Galapagos Islands are actually named Walter Church's Island, but all the other details indicate I was in the Galapagos. Walter Church's Island doesn't appear to exist on any map, but in the Astral, it was home to some of the most incredible creatures I've ever seen. Could it be that Walter Church's Island is a hidden pocket of the Astral, a place with a unique name and energy all its own? Maybe one day I can return and find out more. Hopefully, if I do, I'll remember it. Thanks for tuning in to this prehistoric astral adventure to the Galapagos. Please subscribe, like, and share if you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, happy astral travels.